I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Sean Stover with Ohio Means Jobs, the reentry coordinator for Athens County. And we have offered this informational event to families of people who are being released from prison back into their communities. And we're hoping this will be helpful, answer some questions. There's been a lot of collaboration with the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections and our communities and our community partners working together. And we've seen a lot of positive action and a lot of positive movement for that reason. So I'd like to thank the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections and all the staff working behind the scenes to coordinate this event. I'd like to thank ACEnet for hosting the event and arranging all this great activity. And I'd like to thank Kaylee, a student intern of mine from Ohio University, for working behind the scenes and doing what's asked of her. So one thing I'd like to say before we start is that when people are released from incarceration, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of frustration because most people are starting their lives over. And we try to build these programs so that we can help them with their basic needs, build from their basic needs, work on that pyramid so people can get to where they need to be. Reentry programming is very successful in Athens County because we have a very collaborative county. We have a county of agencies and organizations that work together. That being said, we hope that this information is helpful for you. It's going to be a coordination between community and ODRC. And I'd like to turn this over to Larry Fisher now from ACEnet, who has been gracious enough to host this Zoom event.
Thank you, Sean. We are pleased to have the opportunity to host this and to record it so it could be shared out among the community as time unfolds or as people get closer to their release date. But we are happy to be a part of the Athens County Family Forum this evening. And just a little bit about ACEnet. We're a community economic development corporation based in Athens, Ohio, but we work in all of the surrounding counties that touch Athens. So if you might be living in one of the other counties such as Washington or Meigs, Vinton, Hocking, Morgan, Perry, any of those, we are up and able to serve you wherever you might be. And the way we work in the reentry community is we provide job training in the food sector. So if someone is returning home to the community and needs to find quick employment, and we know that is in the food industry, we provide basic line training for people to take a job. We provide then the Serve Safe trainings 1 and 2 as well, so that people can go on up and advance into supervisory roles or management roles in operating through food service. And so we're available for that. But we're also there if someone is returning and had already had their own business or had been in business or have learned a skill that they think they can turn into a business. We're there for that as well because we do a lot of small business startups and development. So those are the two ways that ACEnet can be utilized for our returning citizens. So if they need to get into the food industry quick to get an income, we can help there. And if they are thinking about starting a business or restarting a business, we're there as well to help that person along the road. So that's how ACEnet would like to work with you. And so please just contact us. We have a website. It's www. As everyone says, acenetworks.org. And so we'd invite you to take a look at our website and reach out to us in that manner. So thank you, Sean, for this opportunity, and to ODRC, and let's get this family forum rolling.
Thanks, Larry. My name is Daryl Graves, and I work with some folks in the Office of Reentry who are going to be with us this evening. Just a couple of things for the good of the order. Those of you who are guests in our forum tonight your microphone will be muted and your camera will be off during the session. However, you're certainly welcome to utilize the chat function that's available in Zoom. If you have questions that you would like for us to address throughout the evening, feel free to put them there. We will have a formal question and answer session at the conclusion of a brief presentation, which will begin shortly. But you can put questions in at any time, and then we'll have a protocol that we'll follow for trying to respond to your questions in real time and also in writing once we get to that section. So Without any further ado from me, I'll introduce Drew Case, who is our reentry coordinator for the Athens area. And Drew will tell you a little bit more about himself, and he will guide us through some information that we want to share with you before we get to the question and answer portion of today's session. Drew?
Thank you, Daryl. Good evening, folks, and thanks for joining us. As Daryl mentioned, my name's Drew Case. I'm a reentry coordinator for the Department of Corrections Office of Reentry. I cover 15 counties in Southeast Ohio. I've been working for the department now over 21 years, and I've spent the entire 21 years in various parts of Southeast Ohio. So this is and has been my home. So this event is very important to me to provide this information to the folks of Athens County. I'm going to present a brief slideshow for the next 10, 15 minutes. Some general information, but covering a wide variety of topics and things that are involved in your loved one who is currently maybe serving time in one of our institutions. So a lot of what we're going to present now is, again, just a snapshot, because we don't want to go into a whole lot of detail, but we're also hoping that this may stimulate some questions on your behalf, because the main focus of this event is to give you folks an opportunity and a platform to ask questions. So Kaylee, if you could get the PowerPoint up and running, we will begin. Okay, thank you. Tonight. Well, several reasons. Governor DeWine, when he took office, a big section of his agenda was supporting and strengthening Ohio families. And he made it very clear that it includes all of Ohio families, which in turn is those who are criminally justice involved, which is what we will be dealing with here tonight. The director of ODRC, Ms. Chambers Smith, came along at the same time as Governor DeWine, and she created an agency value that all Department of Corrections adhere to, and it is simply that hope is job one. We shifted a lot of what we do to emphasize and focus on providing hope for those that we serve. Not only those inside, but you folks who are concerned family members and loved ones on the outside. DRC's theme is family involvement in offender success. We are making it our mission to make sure that all of those folks who return back home from our facilities are as prepared as we can make them for a successful reentry back into the community. The Office of Prison Reentry, who again I work for, our mission statement is to connect individuals with communities, programs, and services. As I mentioned earlier, the presentation is geared up so that we can talk openly about the challenges that you may face as a family member or a loved one. We hope to have open dialogue discussion and answer your questions. We have a very well-rounded, large panel of folks that specialize in different areas and are ready to answer your questions. And then we will also discuss some community and agency resources that are available to you in Athens County. Next slide, please. Just for purposes of discussion, the most accurate and verifiable statistics that I could find in regards to Athens County was from the calendar year 2019. So a county the size of Athens, as you can see on the screen, we had 86 individuals committed to our institutions from Athens County. Gender breakdown of those are 73 male, 13 female. And as you can see, Athens represents less than 1% of the incarcerated population. Next slide. The target audience that we were focusing on for this event will be all the individuals who are incarcerated from Athens County that will be released from today's date all the way through the end of this calendar year, December 31st of 2021. That encompasses 48 individuals. Now, again, we realize that some folks may be Athens County residents and were, sentenced out of a neighboring county. Focus on those who were convicted out of Athens County. So of those 48 individuals, 47 male, 1 female, 43 were white, and 3 African Americans. We currently, of those 48, they are incarcerated in 21 different facilities throughout the state. I just listed the top 3 here. The most Athens County residents are currently at Noble Correctional Institute, which we have several members of Noble Correctional here on our panel. 5 from Belmont Correctional and 4 from Ross. Adult Parole Authority, who is also represented on our panelists. Those parole officers in Athens County do all of the supervision for folks that are released, that are going to be either on post-release control, parole, or several other types of supervision that there are. We currently have 7 parole officers that cover Athens County, 6 regular parole officers, 1 senior officer, and a full-time supervisor, all located right there in Athens. Next, Sean.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about our reentry task force in Athens County. We're very unique in that we have so many members and we have so many organizations and people that are involved with that. We cover the faith-based, the health recovery services, the mental emotional health. The Adult Parole Authority is key with our task force because we do a lot of cross-referring, making sure people are receiving services they need. We just have a vast array, and we meet every other month. And what we do is we discuss what's going on in our communities, what's new, what's the programming. It's amazing how much our libraries are used and how much information they put out, our transportation, our bus system. By coordinating with our task force, we all know who's doing what. I can pick up the phone and say, hey, I got a person that needs certain type of help, and I know exactly who to ask for. I know exactly what kind of help they're going to get. So having that connection with our reentry task force helps us all to be better partners and to collaborate and to provide better services for our returning citizens coming back to our communities. We have a few parents involved. We have a few other community members too. And it's just so good to see everyone come together for that common mission of making our communities stronger and helping our resources to grow. And as I say, in a rural community, you have to stand together or you fall apart. So we've found a way to stand together, to support each other. And that's what the task force is all about. And with the help of the Ohio Department of Rehab and Corrections, who also attends our task force meetings, we are kept in the loop with what's going on in the prisons and the changes. Drew's really good about giving me a release list so I know who's coming back to Athens County and when. And if possible, I can schedule video conferences with those people, make a contact before they get out. If I don't, though, our Adult Parole Authority is super about referring people to our reentry program because we're part of a task force and we work together. I could talk on and on about our task force, but I'm going to go ahead and pass this on back to Drew.
Thank you, Sean. So let's take a quick look at what we have identified as some of the challenges that our returning citizens face upon their release from prison. And this is just a snapshot. There are so many other intangibles. But when folks are released back, there's issues with medical care, medical coverage, mental health, continuing mental health services when they get back into the community. education if they did not complete their GED while they were in the institution, or some of them have even started college, a continuation of that. Finding employment is almost always issue number one for them when they get out. Transportation is huge. A lot of us take it for granted, but if some of our citizens were down for a long time, they won't have their driving privileges or their license expired. Addiction, that is an ongoing, it is usually a lifelong battle for folks. So we want to make sure that we recognize that will need continued care upon release. Security threat group involvement. I'm not sure a lot of folks in the community realize that this is an issue that our returning citizens face when they get out. Pressure to, maybe continue to serve a security threat group that they became involved in while they were inside, or even the other negative associations they had in the community. And a big issue for these folks is just adjusting to independent decision making. Throughout the whole time of their incarceration, they were pretty much told everything to do and when to do it, and now they're going to find themselves in a situation where they're making those decisions on their own. Next slide. Your challenges as a loved one or family member that are going to be the support system for these folks. What is the state of your relationship? We find on occasion that sometimes there's a bit of anger or resentment towards your loved one for committing the crime and serving time. You were left at home to run things and take care of everybody. There may be a history of domestic abuse in the home. Difficulties for you just to understand the experience of incarceration, and it's very hard to do unless you've served time. It's almost impossible to totally understand what their lives were like for their time inside. Different communication styles. Again, something we probably take for granted, but the way they talk, the things they say is different on the inside than it was, out home before they went down. A huge change in their routine and their structure. And a big one, acknowledging and managing your expectations. And that is a key. As family members and loved ones, you want to make sure that everything is just right, and that's not always going to be the case. Life happens on the outside, no matter what our best intentions are. So you as family members and loved ones need to recognize and manage your expectations and not add unneeded pressure and stress on the individual. Next slide. So you may ask yourself, okay, what can I do to help? And again, this is just a snapshot. Attend church services together. We emphasize a lot of faith-based programming in the institution, and we believe in it, and we think that it is of the utmost importance when they get out to continue those positive associations that come with attending church on a regular basis. You can seek community resources for assistance. As you've already heard from Sean, Athens County is extremely blessed to have a wonderful reentry task force. Very, very large amount of folks in the community that are committed to helping each and every one of these folks when they return back to the community. Just be attentive to their behavior and their language, supportive of their positive behavior. The bullet point at the end, avoid enabling, goes along with this. Support their positive behavior, but don't enable them to continue maybe to pick up where they left off prior to their incarceration, and just be a good listener. You don't always have to have the answers. Sometimes they just need somebody to listen to them. We're going to dive into what our incarcerated adults go through as they lead lead up to their release date. So 1 year prior to their release, we begin to transition them to their return home. All of our institutions in the state offer resource fairs where local community agencies come into the institution, and the incarcerated adults can sit down and talk with these folks and begin to plan and line up resources for when they get released. The Ohio Means Jobs has a Restored Citizens program that we offer inside, as well as a wide variety of other programming to help whatever needs that our incarcerated adults have. We have assessments that we do on them, and we try to pair them up with the programming that will meet the needs based on their assessments. Then we cut down to about 120 days to their release. That's when the placement planning phase begins. Next slide. 90 days of release is a final review of the case plans and their needs. So the case planning process is when they start to prepare where they're going to live when they get out, which is where you folks may be coming into the equation. We will review the case plan needs. We provide them with resource guides, copies of their case plans, information to help them reobtain their birth certificate, social security card, DD-214 if applicable, their driving history from the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. We assist them with applications for food assistance as well as Medicaid. We provide them with an APA supervision workshop. So if they're going to be on supervision, they will attend a workshop that is taught by parole officers. So they will have all the information they need as to what their expectations are when they're released on supervision. And a large amount of our counties offer video inreach programs. And for Athens County, I know Mr. Stover will randomly do video inreach where the folks in our institutions, no matter what institution they're in, at our request, they will be sent to a room that has video capability, and Sean will zoom in from Athens, and they can chat face to face to discuss what needs they may have. Next slide. We as the Office of Reentry, go back one please, Kaylee. We as the Office of Reentry also do individual video conferences on a more intimate setting where we will dive deeper into whatever needs they have and try to make the contacts prior to their release so that there is no gap whatsoever. The day they're released, they can hook right up. We do that for mental health patients, or we have community linkage workers both inside the prison and folks on the outside that will make sure they have appointments scheduled at the local mental health provider upon their release. They will have prescriptions for medication that they may be taking. Transportations arrangements to you or to their home will be ironed out, whether it's from a private citizen or a Greyhound bus, and they will be released with a state release ID that is key to them getting a state ID from the BMV when they get out. We provide them with this release ID, and if they have it, they take it to the local BMV before it expires, then they're able to get a state ID without any issue. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about post-release control, or what's used to be known as parole supervision. Not everybody that's released will be on supervision. So some of this will not apply to your specific loved one coming home. But what supervision does is it provides structure and specific conditions for those returning, again, as I mentioned, that have that requirement. So the returning citizen will have a parole officer there in the county. They will come and visit at the home. The parole officers will come to the home, not only talk to the returning citizen, but also you folks in the home and family members. There will be required office visits. The parole officers will assist with planning for any type of needs, whether it be treatment, help with employment resources, and pretty much all aspects of a successful reentry. They will monitor the successful completion of goals and all the challenges and support the positive behavior. Next slide, as I mentioned earlier, the placement plans, those will be done prior to the release and sent out to the parole officer in your county. The parole officers will then come to the house and talk to the family members that live there, provide some basic information. That's what we placement investigation. Make sure it's a suitable residence. It's set up to help the returning citizens succeed. We don't want to place folks in any type of environment that could lead them down the wrong road. Some of our folks, when they get released, will be released to a halfway house or a community residential center as kind of like a step down from our institution to a less restrictive halfway house, and eventually out to a private home in the community. We also work with Returning Home Ohio to help set our folks up in permanent supportive housing. And in the very rare case that some of our folks come out with no placement whatsoever, the parole officer will work diligently with the Office of Reentry on the state level, as well as Sean's Reentry Task Force there in Athens County, and we will do anything and everything we can to make sure that there is some sort of shelter available upon their release. Next slide. Upon release, their first visit with their parole officer, just some general information when they report. They will go over the conditions of supervision, any necessary registration requirements. There is a grievance procedure that we offer to the folks on supervision, which is very similar to the grievance procedure that they have available to them in the institution. They will sign a release of information so that the parole officers and any DRC staff can communicate with the local treatment providers. They will be advised of the supervision fees, and they will be subject to drug and alcohol testing. So again, why are we here tonight? Well, now more than ever, we need to connect. The work of reentry is ongoing. We have a saying in our department that reentry starts on day one. And we believe that, and we strive for that. So the moment an individual enters our reception center, the process of re-entering back home starts. And then we continue that on the outside all the way through the end of supervision, or as long as they want to stay in contact with us, we will continue to assist them. Again, we are here to answer questions and assist with any challenges. We will provide information, resource connections, and hope. Again, hope is job one for us. Of families of Athens County who are criminally justice involved can succeed. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a very well-rounded and very seasoned group of panelists here tonight to assist you with the questions. We have representatives from the Office of Reentry, Athens County's local reentry task force. We have representatives from Noble Correctional Institute. We have the supervisor of the Athens Parole Unit, as well as one of her field officers, and other local community partners on the call, including some substance abuse and mental health partners of ours. And the last slide is some basic contact information. All this should be easily available to you on the internet. The Office of Reentry for ODRC, we have our own email address and phone number. Sean's information for the Athens County Task Force is there. Daryl Graves, who you met at the beginning, is the reentry administrator for the South region. And again, I'm the reentry coordinator for the South region.
Thank you, Drew. So I hope you all appreciated the information that was shared there. And I'll remind you for our guests that we want you to put your questions into the chat. But right now, what I'm going to ask you to do for the next minute or two is please take the time to look at the poll that's being shared. We're going to have poll 1 and poll 2, so it should take just a couple minutes. If you could take the time to respond to that, and then we'll go ahead and transition to answering questions. So I'm going to ask all the folks who are here tonight as panelists or presenters to go ahead and be camera on so our guests can see who we are, and we'll answer questions here as soon as we finish the poll. Kayla, if you could let us know when the poll is completed or closed.
The poll is closed.
Okay, thank you. So we have, Drew mentioned earlier that we have some folks from one of our institutions. We have Warden Jay Forshee is available, and some of his team is available to answer some questions. We also have Ms. Ronnie Burks, who is the director of the deputy director of the Office of Reentry, and Roxanne Coy, who is also the assistant deputy director, and some other staff from the Office of Reentry to answer some of your questions. And then, of course, we have Sean Stover from the Reentry Task Force to answer questions about the coalition or any of the coalition partners. So if you have questions, please go ahead and put them into the chat, and we will respond accordingly. Okay, I see one question in the chat from Allison, and the question is Licking County included in our services? Licking County is served by the Office of Reentry, but that's a different reentry coordinator. That's not one of the counties that is in Drew's catchment area, but one of our other coordinators does serve Licking County. So we share a lot of information about supervision and what happens on supervision. So if you have questions about that, we do have some folks available from our Adult Parole Authority staff to address those questions as well.
There's a question in the chat I can respond to. Does our returning family members have a choice about coming back to our home so they could choose to live on their own? I'm not quite sure what that means, but as far as coming back to Athens County, if a person is on a supervision in Athens County, they have to come back to Athens County unless there are other arrangements made, like for another county where they may have better facilities or a home to go to. Those generally have to be made either right after release or prior to release. But a person that has a probation officer in Athens County comes back to Athens County. And also, can people from other counties work with the Athens Reentry program? You know, I'm open to taking calls from anyone that's coming out of prison, especially in the Southeast Ohio region, because we are lacking with reentry resources in our connecting counties. So there are extra supportive services I can offer people coming just to Athens County because they would be tied into our food assistance programming or our Ohio Means Jobs programming. But something I want to throw out is that every county has an Ohio Means Jobs. And if a person is going back to a county without a reentry program, it's important to contact your local Ohio Means Jobs and start there, especially for employment type services.
Thank you, Sean.
I'll go ahead and add on to what Sean had to say. If someone returning wants to live by themselves, they can turn in a self-maintenance placement, and then Adult Parole Authority will check it out.
Thanks, Mariana. Any other questions about supervision? Or we also talked during the presentation about some things that happen prior to release in the final 120 days, 90 days, and 60 days. So that was, again, that was a lot of information. So if you have questions or concerns or just any kind of general inquiry about what happens in those last several months before someone is released, now is a good time to ask those questions and we can address them for you. Excuse me. Okay, so there's a question from Lorain County, from Lillian, I guess, in Lorain County. Says, I'm from Lorain County. Does renting over owning have any difference for someone coming home? If one of our parole folks can address that.
Sorry.
Mariana, can you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. Let me read this again. Renting or owning, I don't see that making a huge difference if someone is wanting to live by themselves. Whatever address is submitted, we investigate it. And if they're renting, we would talk to, and there's no one there at the residence, we would verify the plan with probably like the landlord. If they're returning to a family member's house, we would come out and speak with the family member, make sure that they're able to support their loved one coming home, and we just take it from there.
And let me chime in just from a different side of that coin without knowing exactly what you were referring to. If the returning citizen is coming to live with you and you are renting, then there is a potential issue that you would have to work out with your landlord based on whatever type of rental agreement or lease you signed. But that is not anything that we get involved in. It's just something you would have to work out with your landlord.
All right, thank you. All right, other questions about supervision or any questions about programming? We mentioned some of the things that happen in those final 120 days. So any questions about that? Or any questions about any other opportunities or how to connect? We mentioned in the chat, and we also mentioned during the presentation about the availability to connect via video right now. So we're doing video in reach. So are there any questions about that? All right, I see another question in the chat right now. Explain some of the ways that families can assist the returning individual in their recovery during the process of being released. So,
I will defer that to Andrew.
okay.
Again, my name's Andrew. I am a chemical dependency specialist. I work with the parole offices here in Southeast Ohio, and I'm based here in Athens County as well. Ways that family members can be, strong allies in this process a lot of times is the accountability piece. I'm thinking about transportation typically being a barrier post-release and needing to get to appointments. Sometimes people are linked prior to release from prison with ongoing services in the community for ongoing substance abuse counseling and support, or maybe it's Vivitrol. Individuals can receive an injection for Vivitrol prior to release from prison with an appointment scheduled for another injection. Family members having that accountability and just being able to provide that transportation for that is direct practice, and how I think people, family members can help as well. That's one of the main things I can think of. Maybe Sean can help me out too.
Yeah, it's we have a really great recovery community in Athens. We have a lot of different organizations that help with recovery. Some provide case management even. We have a lot of groups that are just community and family members and organizations that meet to talk about how we can better serve people in recovery. Because our statistics in Athens County, 80% of the people coming out of incarceration are incarcerated either because they've had an issue with substance misuse or they were committing crimes because of the substance misuse. So that's one of the biggest hurdles for people to get over. And then, as was mentioned earlier, recovery is ongoing. Recovery does not just end. Recovery is something where you need constant help from individuals. Support from families is key. Talking with people, listening to people, as we talked about earlier, helping make sure they get to appointments and they're hooked up with a good counselor, case manager. And like I said, Athens has strong recovery services. And if anyone's having any kind of an issue being linked with them, definitely feel free to contact me at the Ohio Means Job Center. Our information's online. But that is one of the hardest things, is people working with people in recovery.
And I would also say it's important for the family member and the parole officer to have some sort of a relationship. So if there is something, coming up, that can be shared so we can get the individual into treatment. When I first started 30 years ago, we had a whole different attitude towards drugs, and now we're totally opposite. It's all about getting people into treatment so they can get the help that they need.
Thank you, Mariana and Drew and Sean. So along those same lines, one of the things that we want you to hear a little bit more about is programming that's available prior to release. So I'm going to ask Warden Forshee to talk a little bit about some of the programs that are available to someone prior to release that may also be related to that topic.
So good evening, everyone. So as Daryl said, I am the warden at Noble, and I'll tell you, quite frankly, we ran into a few challenges about a year ago, and I don't know if you all know this, but there was a pandemic going around, and we had to put the brakes on a lot of things, and not necessarily, when I say put the brakes, but we didn't come to a complete halt. We just had to do a little bit of rethinking and reorganizing in how we can still deliver services to include release programming and not jeopardize the safety of our population and staff with the spread of the virus. And so what we did, we really broke the prison down into smaller sections, what we call cohorts. And when we did that, and at the time, it was about 10 different cohorts You know, prior to that, you know, we had over 2,000 men crossing paths and going into rooms and classrooms together, and class size could be 30 to 40 people, and that we just had to stop that and slow ourselves down. But one of the things we did was we made sure that, I mean, we know who's getting released. And so prior, well before that release, we have an awesome reentry center in our library, and a staff member by the name of Julie Hub, who is phenomenal at what she does. And Julie has a true passion for those going home, and understands the barriers they face. And so in her shop, she'll just pass these men in very, very small groups, and sometimes it's just one at a time. But she continues to get the job done. And all these things that Drew and Daryl talked about, that's done prior to release, at the very tail end, Julie captures a lot of that. Now, a lot of our case management staff and the units, 90 days out and 120 days out and 60 days out, do a lot of those things that Drew had mentioned in the PowerPoint. But you know, I kind of say all that to say it never stops, and it doesn't stop, because we understand the importance. You know, a lot of anxiety takes place the last few weeks with the men and women that are going home, and we get that and understand that. And so things that we can do on our end to take that anxiety away, I know helps the loved ones out there when they walk out our doors. So the other thing I want you to know about, in addition to the release programming that continues to take place even under pandemic conditions, which is getting much, much better, by the way, and we've loosened up a whole lot. You know, we've started visiting back up again, and again, because that reestablishing with families is so important. So it's important that we were able to get visiting started back up. Small numbers, but started back up all the same. And in addition to that, we have really rolled out a lot of vaccinations and to our staff and population. And all these vaccinations were given out according to the governor's phase plan of rollout, from 1A to B, C, D, and E to phase 2 and all that. So we're now at the stage, we just recently vaccinated all of our population that was 50 and over, if they chose to. And fortunately, a majority of them, about over 80%, did choose to, and that's great. So hopefully your loved ones coming, and we'll continue to vaccinate as the vaccine becomes available. The next phase being 40 years, 40 to 50. And then the phase beyond that, 16 and older. So hopefully we'll capture as many as possible to get that vaccine before they go home. But once again, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to mention those things, and unfortunately, once in a while I can get on my soapbox and somebody has to kick me off of it, because I can go on and on. But I do want to tell you and reiterate what Drew had said earlier about the release preparation starts on day one. And an example of that is, you know, new men come into us, and there's a orientation class that takes place within the first week. And during that orientation, myself, 99% of the time, once in a while I'm not able to be there, but a representative is. But, you know, we talk about you extensively. the family, the loved ones. And I tell them, and you know, yes, I realize you're doing time, but so is your family. And because we recognize the fact that that's hard on family members, but we let them know, we let the men know, we'll do everything we possibly can to keep you engaged with your family throughout your incarceration. Again, once again, because we understand the importance of it, and we know it's important to you as well. So I think that about covers it, Daryl.
Thanks, Ward. We appreciate addressing the programming and also where we are in the vaccination process at your institution. So I think that's information that everyone has some curiosity about. So thank you for sharing a little bit about that as well. Other questions? I don't see any other questions in the chat about programs or processes or supervision or anything like that. I don't think there's anyone in our session from STAR, from the community-based correctional facility. STAR, I don't think anyone has joined us from that facility for this evening. So one thing I do want to share for our guests is that you heard Warden Force mention about family. So I can tell you that there's a lot of work going on right now to be even more inclusive of family. We started the video inreach process and the individual video sessions, you know, once the pandemic started. But I can tell you that there is a lot of work going on in the Office of Reentry to engage families in different ways during the entire incarceration period, as he mentioned from the beginning, through release preparation and then ultimately post-release in the community, especially for those on supervision. So that's something that we're excited about as we continue to try and do better and better in our ability to offer the services that we are here to offer to your loved ones. So any other questions at this point on any of those topics, on pre-release, supervision, post-release programs, or anything? So we won't labor the point, but okay, I do see. Okay, so we see some information there in the chat about someone from STAR participating in another event we're having next Tuesday, the same sort of family-based event. So again, we won't hold you unnecessarily, but before we close, I don't know if our okay, so we do have one other poll that we want you to complete. So if you can take a minute to complete that, that would be great. Kayla, if you can let us know when the poll is closed, please.
I believe it's closed now.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't see any other questions. I haven't gotten any more in the chat, nor via email or text or anything else. So I think we have done what we committed to do, which is provide some information and the opportunity to answer questions and respond to some of your questions or thoughts or concerns. So before I go, even though I promised my deputy director that she was not required to speak, I do want to give her the opportunity to share any thoughts that she has on our session or anything else that she thinks might be helpful to our audience. Ronnie?
Thank you, Daryl. I've always been told if somebody asks you to speak, to take advantage of that opportunity. So I certainly want to, first of all, just thank all of our guests for attending tonight. It's so important for us to do family forums like this. One of the things that you heard Drew mention earlier, I think you heard the warden mention it in a sense, and Daryl as well, is that it's important for our agency to be transparent. If you know our director, Annette Chambers-Smith, you'll hear that from her as well. When we first started this journey with our new director, she stressed to us the importance of not only transparency, but also involving families in this process. And so that's really what these forums are all about. They're really involving the families. We want your input, and we're trying to involve families in every aspect that we can within our agency. So I certainly, again, want to thank all the family members that attended tonight. Please know that if you did not feel comfortable asking a question, we provided you with some email addresses earlier where you can send a question and we will respond to you. My team knows that my expectation is that we respond within 24 hours. And so we will do our best to respond within that time frame. I also just want to take a moment to thank all of our partners that were here tonight. Mr. Fisher for helping to host this event, Mr. Stover. There are partners from the APA and also the other team members from the Office of Reentry, as well as the institution staff. A special thank you to Warden Jay Forshee, because, you know, it's tough. Oftentimes wardens are very busy, but Mr. Forshee, as you all know, has a background in reentry, cares about this issue, and will do whatever it takes to ensure that the men and women, the men returning from his facility have the resources that they need. So we hope that this event has been what you expected tonight. We certainly want to continue to partner with Sean and the Athens Reentry team, and we look forward to connecting more with families and to being the best partner that we can be with families. We don't want families feeling like they're incarcerated too. So it's so important that we do everything we can to help you. So again, thank you so much to everyone for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ronnie. So again, thank you for being here. Everyone who participated tonight, who registered, you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint and the contact information that you saw on that last slide, and any other information that Sean and his group wants to share with you. So again, we appreciate you being here, and I hope that we answered some of your questions or addressed some of your concerns. So we appreciate your time and attention, and have a good night.